Trish and Rob McGregor welcome you to a place where all kinds of phenomena flourish. Voices whisper ancient secrets, signs and symbols are abundant. UFOs, ETs, ghosts, and even the dead move about freely. Here we meet authors, researchers, and investigators of the mysterious, the strange, and of the inexplicable anomalies that surround us. Step out of the everyday world and take a journey into the mystical underground.
McGregor
and Trish McGregor
and our tech magician producer John Posey. You can go to the mysticalunderground.com where we make regular posts and where you can find out about our books. Among them are The Shift, Reports from the Mystical Underground, Phenomena, Harnessing Your Psychic Abilities, Aliens in the Backyard, and The 7 Secrets of Synchronicity, among many others. Trish's latest novel is White Crows. Rob's latest book is Breathe, a master diver's survival tales, co-authored with Rick Bedoya.
Julia Gordon-Bramer is a professional tarot card reader, Sylvia Plath scholar, award-winning writer and poet, and former professor for the graduate writing program at Lindenwood University. She's written extensively on the life of the poet and novelist Sylvia Plath, and her new book is called Tarot Life Lessons, Living Wisdom from the Major Arcana. Tarot Life Lessons is a fascinating book, and it's a collection of real-life stories lifted from her journals. And with each story is explored through the meaning of one of the 22 major arcana cards of the tarot, based on the author's more than 44 years of experience as a tarot card reader. The book peeks into client readings to show how each card tells a story and how it only takes a small amount of familiarity to decipher a world full of meaning in the cards. Finally, it shows how to use the tarot to grow your strengths, identify weaknesses, conquer problems, and move on from painful situations. Welcome, Julia. It's a real pleasure.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. So how did you become a professional tarot card reader?
How I became, well, the story of how I became a tarot card reader is the first story that opens my book, Tarot Life Lessons. But a professional, that happened in graduate school. So when I started graduate school in 2007, getting my MFA in creative writing, poetry, and fiction. And it was then that people kept, I would bring my cards to classes. And I always said that having my tarot cards made me a great icebreaker at parties. And I wasn't always great with the small talk. And so if I said, you want a tarot card reading?
People love to talk about themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a way to understand others and really to understand if I even liked other people, to see them in their cards. And so I would bring them into class and I would do them for my fellow students in between class. And I had this one professor who really thought, he said, you should do this professionally. And he brought me into a number of his other classes to read for his classes.
Oh, wow.
And then I would do like the holiday Christmas parties. And then my friends started saying, come to my party, come to my reception, my whatever. And it got to the point that it was so time consuming that I knew I had to start charging. So that was how I became professional.
Wow.
And it started part-time while I was also teaching after I had graduated. But then it just got to the point that it snowballed and it was more in demand and a better use of my time and a more joyful use of my time than teaching. Certainly better compensating than teaching too, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
what we did, I want to show the cards, Rob.
Okay, yeah.
We drew 6 cards to see how today's thing would go.
Great.
Okay, here's the first one. See
Okay.
it?
And
Okay. It's
that's
the
what the
Seven of
mother
Pentacles.
piece deck, the round deck there.
It's
Yeah.
the
Okay.
Tarot of the Cloisters.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's Seven of Pentacles. Okay. 10 of Pentacles. Can you see it?
You got it a
Yes.
little
Okay.
too close. Try to hold
Too
it a
close?
little
Okay.
further back. Yeah.
10 of Cups.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, Page of Wands.
Okay.
8 of Cups.
Uh-huh.
And the 7 of Swords.
Okay.
And what
All
I
right.
think, my take on that, I also wrote a tarot book called Power Tarot, which was about spreads. So to me, the 7 of Swords is about, we were fortunate enough to get you as a guest through your publicist, Gail Tor.
Right.
So it's like we came in the back door. Okay, but
Yeah,
what's your
Gail
take?
is a force, by the
Oh,
way.
she's great.
Incredible.
She's terrific.
Yeah, so I mean, so 7 of Swords, to me, that's being in the right place at the right time. It's seizing the day. So it would say that yeah, maybe you're a little lucky to get me. Maybe this is the right time to get me. Which is exciting to think about. Those 10s, 10 of
Those are
Pentacles
great.
and 10 of Cups. Yeah, all the blessings around
Right.
it. So love that. 7 of Pentacles is putting in the hard work to reap the rewards later. What was it? A Page of Wands?
Where'd it go? Wait a minute. I took a picture of this, fortunately. Okay, let's see here. Oh, come on. Okay. It was, yeah, the Page of Wands.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's just fun. That's fun, lively energy. So
what's your take on the 8 of Cups?
The 8 of Cups, I think of as putting the past behind you, going to greener pastures. There's always like green in the distance that the person is heading for. And the cups in the foreground usually feel kind of sad. So it's sort of like yeah, I'm done with that, and moving on. That's a great card for like how I like to think of something like COVID. I'm
Yeah,
very
right.
done with COVID. Let's
move on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Okay.
So Julia, I think that as a tarot reader, you can have access to all kinds of different types of people that you wouldn't normally come across. And that's what's so interesting about your book, because you get right into the readings and the different situations in people's lives, and people, like I said, you'd never meet, like the wealthy Nigerian woman. That story was very interesting.
I love the one about the 2
you.
Latina women, in the Devil.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They were, the gold diggers.
Yes, they were real characters.
Yeah. And what I hope is that with all of these people, even if their morals are sort of questionable, like the gold diggers, I hope that you'll find a way, like I did, to love them and to understand where they come from and what makes them who they are. Yeah, because I think when I wrote this book, which originally it was all, sort of blog and diary entries. My working title was called The Tarot Diaries when I put this together. And so initially it wasn't for anyone but me. And then when I assembled it and I knew it would be a book, I did want it to have sort of a higher purpose of oneness, that these are universal experiences. And if we haven't had these experiences personally, we know somebody who has, or, we've all kind of seen it in real life. I don't think there's anything that isn't beyond. I mean, certainly some of these stories are surprising, but we've all experienced at least someone who has had the death of a child, say, or never found love, or was taken by a scam artist. All of these stories are in there.
Tell us about your fascination with Sylvia Plath. I found that really interesting.
Yeah. Gosh, I first found her when I was 16.
Uh-huh.
And that was when I read The Bell Jar. And
Mhm.
interestingly, it's always been for me, even with The Bell Jar being a novel, it's always been her poetry that spoke to me. And in
Mhm.
her copy, the copy that I had of The Bell Jar was a poem that she wrote at the back, that she wrote at just 19 years old, called
Right.
Mad Girl's Love Song. And it's kind of, people don't really know that poem. It's not one of her most famous ones because it was something she wrote in her youth. But her whole life was youth, really.
Yeah,
Dying at
really.
30,
I mean,
but
it ended at 30.
you know what I mean. She wrote it at 19. And I was always rather captivated by Mad Girl's Love Song. I knew I had some things in common with her, like weird things, like, some of it was just sort of coincidental, perhaps, if you believe in coincidences, which I don't.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, right. So, my grandmother's name was Sylvia. My mother was British and she married an American. She came from Britain to America. Sylvia was American.
Right.
She went to Britain and married a Brit. So we had sort of that. I called
Uh-huh.
it my Lincoln Kennedy coincidence, if you know the Lincoln.
Right, we do.
Yeah, and so there were things like her father died when she was 8 and he had lost his left leg. My grandfather died when I was 8 and he had lost his left
Wow.
leg.
That is
Just
strange.
sort of weird little things.
Uh-huh.
When you line our names up, they sort of line in the same way. I've done it all. I've worked it all out with like numerologists and stuff. So there's some fun things there, but the Plath stuff didn't really gel until graduate school. When I was, gosh, in my early 40s, I guess, or early to mid 40s. And right around 2007, when I went to grad school. And I had a semester end project that I had to design on my own in poetry class. And everybody was sort of like doing an analysis of, somebody's poem or something like that. And I went up to my professor and I said, after reading Ariel, which is Sylvia Plath's sort of ultimate work in poetry, I said, after reading Ariel, I just can't get over all the tarot imagery. And I said, can you tell me more about that? And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, look, and I said, here's the Knight of Swords, here's the Empress, here's the Death card, here's the, and I start showing him, and he's like mind blown, and he says, make that your semester end project, would you?
Wow.
And it became my entire life project. So it became much bigger than just that. And essentially, I realized that all of the poems in Ariel were in this perfect tarot card sequence. She did the major arcana, and then she did the minor ranks, and then she did the court cards, and then she has 4 remaining poems which correspond with the suits, and so I identified all of this as my semester end project, and then I got much deeper down the rabbit hole. And Plath had tarot cards of her own, which she refers to in her poem Daddy, when she says, with my gypsy ancestress and my weird luck and my tarot pack and my tarot pack. Yeah. And so tarot, of course, being another name for tarot. And so I was just enamored, and as I got into these poems, and what I realized was, everybody for 50 years has been reading her only as drama and suicide and depression. And when you understand how to align them with the tarot cards, it opens up to entirely different meanings. And she was a genius's genius. So it's kind of become, what's that?
Do you think she did that consciously, or was it unconscious?
I believe she did it very consciously, because she and her husband were active practitioners in mysticism. And her husband, Ted Hughes, he's been widely written for structuring his poems on Kabbalah and weaving in alchemy. And she did the same thing, but nobody thought to look at her work. He's been studied, and there have been countless biographies, and he wrote his own called Shakespeare and the Goddess of Complete Being. about how he wove in all this stuff to his work. And he even said in that book that Plath did it, but nobody has seen it, which is just crazy to me.
I think
But
part of that
think,
is the era, you know?
Yeah, and I think you have to be both a Sylvia Plath scholar and a tarot scholar to see it. And that's me, you know? And so I feel that, you know, she chose me, or God blessed me, or however you want to look at it. I feel like the luckiest person in the world. Now, I have been attacked by academia. They do not like me. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. So I'm not a PhD. I have an MFA, but that's not good enough, and you know, in their camp. And so, so I'm not a PhD, and I'm not kind of. What I've really learned is PhD means you're brainwashed and you're taught there is one thing, you know, and they do not know how to think outside their world.
Yeah.
So, so it has been a fight, and for a long time I was really heartbroken that I was not kind of let into their camp, and they were kind of sort of quietly unfriending me on Facebook and you know, not wanting anything to do with me. But I've learned, you know, in my later years, and I guess I had to have a little heartbreak, and I had to get away from them and stop trying to get their validation, that that's not where my audience is. They're not my tribe.
Do you think?
And so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you have any past life connection with Sylvia?
You know, I don't think I was her. Like I have people who say, "Do you think you were Plath?" But here's the thing: I think she chose me, and I'll tell you one. I have, and I'm traveling right now, so I'm talking to you from a hotel room. So unfortunately, I cannot hold this for you. But I have pictures on my Instagram and on my Twitter. I became the owner of a hermetic caduceus that Sylvia Plath herself carved out of wood with her own big initials, SP, on it. She did it in her teens at a summer camp, and it's got all these alchemical symbols. It's basically, if you don't know what a caduceus is, it's like a magic wand that she carved out of a pretty wood. And Dr. Richard Larson, who is an elderly man now, he has been a family friend to the Plaths. He was very close with Aurelia. He knew knows Plath's brother, Warren. He inherited and was given a lot of items from Sylvia's estate, you know, that didn't go into the museums and the archives. And so he's owned this caduceus for many, many years, and it's been studied, and it's been the subject of theses, and I was contacted by a friend of his, a mutual friend, and she said that he was looking to put it in the hands of someone who would truly appreciate it. Not just someone who loved Plath, but someone who got the mysticism. And so it came to me the summer before last, and like,
where do you have it?
I keep it in a safe. It's very, you know, imagine her tarot cards were auctioned off in 2020 for $200,000.
Wow.
And they were just what she owned. She didn't make those. So this is, I don't even know what the value of this could be, but it's huge. And so it has to be locked up. It's not something I can just keep on my desk, you know.
You should tell the academia people about what you have there.
Oh, they know. They know. I mean, I've been very public about it, and I've had pictures holding it on my Facebook and Instagram, and they know all about it. I'm sure they're furious.
No, they probably just think you're weird.
Oh, I know they think I'm weird. Yeah. And I know they don't think I'm a serious scholar, you know. And it's all about being very serious, you know.
Tell me, why was Ted Hughes so hated after her death?
Well, so I mean, you know, toward the end of their marriage, she really hated him. You know, he was not faithful to her. She gave her life to him. And that's the thing, you know, she was the most devoted student. When I say student, and that's another thing, like with the mysticism, he gave her exercises in mysticism. This is all in her journals and letters. And again, people don't see it. You know, she wrote that she wanted to master tarot card reading. She wanted to master astrology. She wanted to be like W.B. Yeats and his wife Georgie and do the automatic writing. She wrote about all of this. You know, she's been photographed with her crystal balls. It's crazy that people are not, that, you know, won't take this seriously. She talked about in the end days, you know, doing these witchy bonfires and putting in her husband's fingernail clippings and hair, you know, I mean, you know, this is really kind of getting into black magic-y kind of stuff.
A little bit.
Yeah. So there's a friend of Plath and Hughes's, L. Alvarez. He was an editor for the London Times, and he wrote a pretty famous article called "Did Black Magic Kill Sylvia Plath?"
Oh, interesting.
And I actually have a theory, not black magic, but I think Kabbalah, because some of the rules of Kabbalah, you have to be over 40. And both her and Ted Hughes were in their 30s, or actually, I'm sorry, she was in her 20s, and he was 4 years older. So they were both breaking that rule. You're also supposed to be male, which is interesting. And the punishment for studying Kabbalah, breaking those rules, is madness. So kind of interesting, right? And they were pretty deep into it. And there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of books. There's a lot, you know, stuff they read in their libraries. In my forthcoming book, with the same publisher, with Inner Traditions / Destiny Books, I have a book coming out in May called The Occult Sylvia Plath. That'll be in May 2024. And that was originally supposed to be an introduction to my first book on Plath. I've got 3 published books on Plath right now. And my working title was The Magician's Girl, because she had a line in the Bee Meeting that says, the poem, The Bee Meeting, says, "I am the magician's girl. I do not flinch." And, you know, the magician's girl, it's sort of like the magician's apprentice who studies from her mentor and becomes so powerful, and the power becomes a little out of control, if you know that story. There's a great Disney movie where Mickey does this. and the brooms start, you know, running away, and it all becomes but I believe her power got even out of her own control. It's my goal to redeem Plath, to get her away from her hysterical, crazy image that people insist on holding her. I think it's a really sexist view. And I think we're finally in a time that we can look at her and say, whoa, this woman had brains on top of brains, you know, and she was a genius's genius. And so that's what I want people to understand about Plath. Love her or hate her, you don't have to like her poetry, but look at what she did. Look at what she was capable of. People do not understand this. And so I want to redeem her for that.
That's great.
Why, you know, what the calling is, I don't know. I really don't know. It speaks to me.
When did Hughes die?
In the late 90s. I think
90s.
It was
Okay.
1998. Yeah. I really regret that I didn't find this work earlier so that I could have gone and met him.
Yeah.
But my husband has said, oh, you know, he was such a rogue, he probably wouldn't made a move on you. You know, I think there's some truth to that. He had a lot of girlfriends, a lot of girlfriends, especially very young. And
Now, do you think Plath has been reincarnated? Do you get any sense of that?
You know, I think she speaks to me, and I know she's spoken to me through the work. And I even talk about that in, if you want to look up the introduction to my first book, which was Fixed Stars Govern a Life, Decoding Sylvia Plath. That book is no longer in print, although I sell PDFs of it for just $5. But the introduction I put up for free on academia.edu. And so you can read about how I came through, you know, how the process was for me to decode these poems. And there was one point where I got to poem number 14. And I'm sorry, poem number 15, excuse me. It, you know, because we always start from 0, the Fool card in the Major Arcana. So it gets a little screwy. So I was at the 15th poem, and which was Ariel. And I started to come across all of this Aleister Crowley kind of poem. It's like she had essentially rewritten an Aleister Crowley poem. She had taken, I should say, you know, he was a very poetic writer. It's kind of a prayer that he wrote. But here's the thing that really freaked me out. It was to the Great Beast 666, and it was, and that scared me, because I have a background, a Christian background. I grew up in the Episcopal Church. For many years, I studied Bible study, you know. As I got older, I got into things like A Course in Miracles, but I have never wanted that dark energy. I've never wanted to go to that garbage, you know. To me, that is just like, no. And so when I saw this, it kind of freaked me out. And I thought, oh no, I have to stop this for a minute. Like, I didn't even know if I wanted to pursue it. I thought this is going down a very dark rabbit hole, and maybe I don't want to find this out, you know. And like, maybe she's not the literary hero, I thought. And I went to bed that night, and as I was just drifting off into sleep, you know, that in between place where you're not asleep, you're not awake,
hypnagogic images,
the place, exactly, the place of meditation and everything. And I heard audibly, and in her voice, which I know so well because I've listened to so many recordings, I heard her say, "Move through."
Wow.
And I was like, whoa.
That's incredible.
And it scared me a little. I mean, it scared me awake. And I knew then, I said, okay, I'll just go to the next poem. And what I realized as soon as I went to the next, first of all, the next poem, Ariel, is in alignment with the Temperance card. And the next poem is the Devil. And she was setting it up. She was setting up the Devil card because that was the place. And Ariel is also, if you read my decoding, she wrote it about the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and, you know, and the terrible nature of all of this. So of course it was awful, you know, with the peeling off of the skin and the, you know, it's all in, you know, the red eye is the flag of Japan that she closes out, you know, into the red eye, the cauldron of mourning, you know. And oh my goodness, it's really about the whole bombing of Japan. And it, just to tell you, I sort of get chills again. It's an incredible poem. And so she was just setting up the Devil card and beginning the Terror, which kind of ends with the Tower, which follows the Devil. And you know, and it is a story of self-actualization, or the hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell calls it. The whole Major Arcana is. And so we have this dark night of the soul, and this, you know, the kind of terrible things that we succumb to that can destroy us, and it just fits. So
Julia, you mentioned Aleister Crowley and some of this dark stuff that you didn't want to get involved in, but a lot of people think the tarot is something dark.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
tell the story, Trish.
Okay, well, for a while, we have a neighbor who's a twin, and for a while her twin and her husband and son were living with them. And so the twin said to me, "Trish, can you do my tarot cards and see if, you know, everything's going to work out and we're going to be able to get our house here?" So I went over to our neighbor's house and I had my tarot deck, and her husband flipped out. "Oh no, those are evil, Trish. You can't bring those in my house." And I thought, oh my God, you know, it
people
was like,
think it's like a Ouija board. They think we're conjuring spirits. They think we're inviting, you know, all kinds of evil elements. And
I mean, I said to him, I said to Kevin, I said, "Kevin, these are Jungian archetypes." I said, "Do you know who Jung is?" "Well, no,
not really."
Okay,
right.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think I have to interject real quick. I think a lot of people when they hear Aleister Crowley, they think of Led Zeppelin and
oh, sure. Yeah.
All right.
yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
true.
So I hope that this, my latest book, Tarot Life Lessons, I hope that that is going to help change some of this. Of course, people who are afraid of tarot probably aren't going to read my book, honestly. But it, I'm showing, first of all, I'm showing who I am and that I come from the Episcopal Church, and that I am about love and light. And I even have one specific story where I was working, it's in alignment with the star card, and I was working the St. Louis Renaissance Fair for 5 or 6 years. I was their regular tarot card reader, and I would get all kinds of these people who were very into sort of the dark side, who had an expectation that I would be as well. And so I tell a story of these two boys who are very gothy, who kind of come into my tent and they're thinking Satanism is so cool, and and I just talk about how I handle that, but I'm really not at all into that. And you'll see, if as you read the stories in Tarot Life Lessons, that there is no conjuring, there is no possession. I do believe I'm channeling spirit.
Yeah.
And before I read for people, I do a quick little prayer or meditation, and I ask God, I call it God, some people, or Holy Spirit, to give me the words, to be the gift that you need, in this time. And so it's really important to me that people understand that I am in the light, and that this isn't, spooky. There's no spells, there's no curses. I get a lot of people who sometimes want me to do spells and curses, and I say, go somewhere else. While people will joke and call me a witch, and I even have a t-shirt that says witch, but I'm not even really of that camp. And I have friends who consider themselves to be pagans or witches, and that's all good, but for me, when you're in source, when you're connected with the God energy, you have great power. And I don't believe that I need to do spells. I do clearings sometimes, if people ask me if they have, some uncomfortable energy, and I'll clear or I'll bless a space, but I'm not really in that department. I don't knock it, but it isn't what I do.
I can see how academia might not know how to deal with you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Julia, how many tarot decks do you have, and which one is your favorite?
Oh, golly. I don't even know how many I have. I don't know. It's in the hundreds for sure.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
More than me, Rob.
I mean, I've been collecting for, at least 25 years, at least. I have to say that I continually go back to the universal weight and or rider weight. My very favorite, this is just so good for symbolism. It's really good to explain to my clients like why a card means something, and they can actually see it in the pictures. I think it's just very easy to understand, and I tell all beginning tarot card readers, begin with this deck, because this is the one, or anything rider weight based for sure. My very favorite deck is by Robert Place, and it's the Alchemical Tarot deck. I specifically like one called the Revised Edition, which he doesn't make anymore, and it's pretty darn expensive to find one new on Amazon. I mean, it gets well into the like $300-400 to find one new. But I still have my old ones, although they're pretty used, so I don't use them all the time. But I just love that deck. For me, that one is just so full of magic, and I've just had really good readings with it. But time and time again, this is the one I go to for my day-to-day stuff. And you can replace this easily. So as they get worn out, no problem. Get another one for $20.
So
do you
go ahead, Trish.
Well, I was just going to ask you, do you read for yourself?
Oh, it depends. If I can be open, if I can be not biased about something. You know, if I am not really married to one answer or another,
Right.
but if I have a question that I'm, you know, that's very important to me, I
Right.
probably won't read for myself
It's
because I'm
tough.
too attached. Yeah, I'm too attached to how it's supposed to go. Same thing with my loved ones. You know, if my son who has toured the world in a band, if he says to me, "Will I be safe on this trip to Europe?" Well, I care about that, and all I want to see is safe. You know, but if he says, should I go to Amsterdam or should I go to, you know, Germany? I'm not necessarily attached to one or the other, you know, depending on world politics and that kind of thing. And that can make a difference, I suppose. But yeah, so, you know, I just think it's about, can I be blank? I prefer to read for perfect strangers because I'm always going, I know nothing about you and I have no attachments. And that just seems to be the best all around. Like, you know, usually that's how I get my regular clients, because they always go, oh my gosh, you know, and I've had people tell me that they get more out of one session with me than they do a year of therapy, because it's just right there and they can see it too, you know. And so as long as we're doing a reading either in person or on video, and I do lots of phone readings as well, but I like it when they can see the cards, because then I can hold a card up and explain to you, and you can really, and you might even, Trish, you might even see something in that picture that relates to you that I don't get, you know. And so sometimes we're reading it together, which can be a real magical experience. Yeah.
Why do you use the reversed meanings in when the cards come out?
To me, it's just a wasted, you know, load of meanings to not read reversals. I know a lot of people don't. I learned with reversals, and it's so much more accurate. You know, if I know some people say, oh, every card has dignities, you know, I'm just going to pull one from my deck. So I have strength here, right? And if I say, you know, I could say, well, strength means, of course, having strength and overcoming. And, you know, but in reverse, it means you're doubting your strength. You may fear you lack the strength. Now, I do always say, no one gets the strength card unless they're very strong, but in reverse, you might not be believing in that strength, you know? And so I just think it adds more context. And if I'm telling someone how strong they are, and it's a place where they're really feeling weak, you know, they might reject that reading altogether.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, one of the people that you write about, the woman who never found love and who is very reserved and didn't really say anything to you, I thought of her as like, you never said what her job was or anything, but I see her as like somebody's boss, and the worst boss in the world. I don't know why that's that's what came up with me.
Yeah. I think I do touch base early in the story. She was a psychologist or a psychotherapist.
Okay. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I think it is in there, because I remember at the end of the story thinking, oh, I'd hate to be one of her clients. I wrote that too.
Yeah.
But she was tough. Yeah, she is not. I had one other woman in my history who I did not write about in this book, who also told me she was totally enlightened. And you know, and like I said in the book, I call bullshit.
Yeah,
I can say that on your program.
She was a psychologist too, right? I think she was a psychologist.
The one, yeah, the one that you're referring to was a psychologist. Yeah. But the very difficult woman at the Christmas party. Yeah, we had kind of a showdown. And you know, and that's the other thing about tarot life lessons is I hope that I have conveyed how human I am, and that I'm not sitting on a mountaintop, you know, being your guru, telling you all of the secrets of humanity. I am in the trenches, feeling insecure, feeling pulled into drama, needing to have boundaries, all of that. And so, yeah, I wrote it to be real. And as I said, I mean, they started as my journal entries. So, so it was initially just for me when I began this book.
I think one of the other interesting ones, you had a surprising story where the person you're actually reading was dead.
Oh yeah, I read that one. That was interesting.
And I really felt by the end of that the person who brought you that story was in that car when he was killed.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too, which I said I hoped it was not true. And I think I asked him, you know, in the story, and he said, no. But that was my feeling as well. And I think he had some guilt, and it all came out, of course.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of story that, you know, when I get information like this, and you'll see, I had the quandary of, do I go to the police, you know, to report this crime? Well, what am I going to say? I saw it in the tarot cards.
Yeah, right.
I don't know this person's last name. I don't know where this happened. I don't know when this happened.
They'd show you the door.
Like, yeah, exactly. They'd be like, goodbye. Yeah.
Goodbye. Thank you.
But yeah, it was a pretty interesting story. And people have told me, having read it, that they've heard versions of that story, that the sort of switch the drivers in a bad accident, that it's not an uncommon thing. So yeah, kind of creepy, but
spooky.
Yeah.
I think the police could find out who owned the car, but then they could say, well, he was the one who wasn't drunk.
Right.
So he was the designated driver.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's terribly sad for the mother. And that's how it came out, of course, in the story, was the mother was grieving that she had this lie told to her about her son. And he died with her believing that. So yeah, interesting stuff. And this is all, of course, just very human, you know, the human experience and our fear of getting in trouble. So we lie. And
Julia, how do you think, I'm going back to Plath for a minute, Plath compares to Anne Sexton?
I mean, well, they were friends.
Yeah, I know they were.
Yeah, they were good friends. And Sexton, to me, I like some of her work, but she's harder. Plath was a little softer somehow.
Yeah, that's true.
Sexton is raw. and while I have not studied Sexton I haven't studied anybody with the depth that I've studied Plath, honestly. But I don't believe that Sexton had all of the layers of meaning tucked into her work the way Plath did.
No, she was pretty blatant. I mean, the Death Notebooks are blatant.
Oh, sure. And they were both called, Plath and Sexton were both called confessional poets.
Right.
And Ted Hughes always said Plath was not a confessional poet, but everyone, you know, in fact, he said, in fact, she was a mystical poet of the highest order. That's how I open up, that quote is how I open up my book, The Occult Sylvia Plath. And I believe Ted Hughes. And, you know, I think that Anne Sexton indeed was a confessional poet. And she was like, this is me, and this is raw, and some of it is ugly, and let's talk about me hating my children and me hating my mother, and let's talk about menstruation, and you know, and all kinds of really uncomfortable subjects for 60s and 70s. But yeah, you know, she was good and she was powerful. And I like some of her poems more than others, but she, to me, she was much more raw and did not have the genius of this layered meaning that Sylvia.
Yeah, she
Plath
wasn't
had.
mystical, I don't think at all.
Right. Although she did inspire Sylvia. There's a few poems Plath wrote, as I believe, kind of a tribute to Anne Sexton. So yeah.
Well, also Sexton had a weird synchronicity. She wrote the Death Notebooks was the last book she wrote before she committed suicide. So it was almost like a precognitive thing.
Yeah, setting herself up. Yeah, she was jealous that Sylvia died before she did.
Yeah.
She wrote an essay about it called The Barfly Ought to Sing.
Yeah, I remember
and she
that.
talked about how they used to sit in the Ritz-Carlton in Boston and have their 3 martini lunches and muse about their suicides, both their past attempts and their futures, and and she was jealous that Plath did it first. Yeah,
Well,
which
she
is
was
pretty
older.
sick.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
sick.
A little bit. Mhm.
Yeah.
Both very beautiful.
Yeah.
Julia, how do you deal with readings that that the cards really create
Negative.
something disturbing? I mean, how do you?
You
don't know these people, and you're just telling them, that you're seeing things that do not look good at all.
Right. So what I always tell everybody new, is that I'm showing you what you already know from a higher subconscious level, and I'm mirroring it back to you. I'm also reading about what has not happened yet, might not happen if you change your energy, if you change your direction. So I always emphasize that if we see something coming up that you don't like, you are not doomed. This is not going to be a foregone, it has to happen this way and there's no way out. With a heads up, tarot is just showing you where you're going.
Right.
So, Rob, if I put some cards down for you that says you're going to have a terrible accident because you're careless in some way, and it's going to happen within 6 months, well, you'd best bet that that's not the time to get on a ladder without anybody around, or to drive buzzed, or something like that, and you take precaution.
Well, it's about free will.
Absolutely.
Your choices.
Yeah.
Outside of the tarot, do you see symbols in your life that you pay attention to with animals or?
Sure.
Yeah.
All the time. The time. If I'm, if I'm traveling right now, and if I am, maybe I'll see a sign from home, or a sign that, somebody relates to me. And so, how can I explain this? I tell my clients, it's not an accident if you're thinking about someone and a song comes on the radio that says the exact right things, or you see someone's name on a street sign, or on a license plate, or a billboard as you go by. I take all of that information in and go, okay, I'm connected, or they're reaching out to me, or I need to pay attention to this, or something like that. I also pay attention to my dreams, of course.
So I just had an experience yesterday that I've been kind of mulling over. I was riding my bike on an off-road trail, and I go around the corner, and suddenly there's a rattlesnake laying right across the trail, and I swerve around, and I stop because I want to take a picture of it, and I do so. And but I'm staying like he's all wound up, and he's like in the attack mode. So I'm staying like 6 feet away from him. And then I decided I better get out of here. So I get on my bike, and it lunges at me right to the back of the bike. And, I keep going, I look back.
Thinking maybe you should have run it over.
Yeah. Well, if I would have run it over, it might have,
might have got your shin.
Might have got me. Yeah. So I don't know what that means. Can you pull a card on that to see what it might?
Yeah. Let's take a look. I mean, I have my ideas just listening, but let's pull a card on that. And, I mean, there is not a rattlesnake card. There might be in the alchemical deck. Okay. So I have the star in reverse for this.
Interesting.
So the star card. Well, first of all, it is very much a nature card. She is out in nature, out in the outdoors. In reverse, I would say it's probably a symbol for you to sort of mind your territory, or his territory in this case. It could be that mutual respect. It could be that there's something going on in your life right now where let's not be careless. Let's not step out of bounds.
Right.
Let's not go too fast. there's a symbol right there. Had you been going faster, Rob, on your bike,
Yeah.
you would have either run over that snake or that snake would have bitten you, right?
Yeah.
And so you were aware enough to stop, aware enough of your surroundings, aware enough to slow down around that corner or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say this is probably about awareness and boundaries, and not blasting through something too quickly where you could make a fatal error.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the snake also has another meaning, especially among Native American lore, to related to wisdom as well.
Well, the
Does
snake
that
is a
apply to
very
rattlesnakes, though?
alchemical.
Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
I
a
know that's
rattlesnake.
kind of what I was thinking, that the snake's a very alchemical symbol, and non-rattlesnakes, like the Ouroboros is
Right.
either a snake eating its own tail or two
Right.
snakes eating
Yeah.
their own tail. And but the rattlesnake is different because the
Yeah.
rattlesnake is more of a warning.
Yeah.
That rattle is a built-in warning.
Yeah, he
And
was
so
rattling.
Ooh.
yeah, so I mean, just symbolically to me, he's saying back off,
Yeah.
slow down,
Yeah.
get out of my turf,
Right. Yeah.
and that's just something to apply to your life right now.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, maybe it's saying you're charging ahead just a little too fast, Rob. Maybe you need to sort of slow down. Maybe you were getting your warning in that snake.
Yeah. Yeah, he was not a
Interesting.
friend at all. I mean, he
No.
was
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. That was interesting.
I'm glad you didn't run over him.
Yeah.
I am too.
Yeah.
They are to be respected,
Yeah.
and they're pretty cool animals as long as you're not too close to them.
Right. Yeah.
Now, before you went out on that bike ride, and I said, be careful. 'Cause I
Right.
always worry about Rob being out in the woods. So
Uh-huh.
I had just finished reading something that had come up on my phone about what to do in Florida if you're if you're bitten by a snake or
Really?
a
Wow.
rattlesnake
Yeah.
or some other type of, snake. If
Oh,
it bites
I
you.
didn't know
So
Florida had rattlesnakes.
Oh, we
So
got all kinds of critters here.
Okay, interesting.
Water moccasins are
Yeah,
more
water
common.
moccasins.
Yeah, and I've seen
Uh-huh.
them. Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I tend to think of rattlesnakes just out west.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but yeah, they're I guess they have them here. So another question, how does Tarot help one to find solutions to personal, spiritual, or professional challenges? That's kind of a broad
Well,
question.
yeah, so people ask me questions. I mean, sometimes they'll just say, let's put down cards to just see what you see, sort of a general reading.
Mhm.
And sometimes those things will come up. I may see the Lovers, I may see conflict, I may see work challenges and struggles. I mean, there are cards for everything. So the tarot is broken into the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. There's 78 cards total, and there are 22 Major Arcana cards, which is 0 to 21, and those Major Arcana cards are those big life events. So that's when babies are being born. We have mother cards, we have father cards, we have lover cards, we have the Wheel of Fortune and sudden blessings, and we have catastrophe, and we have the devil with his sensual pleasure, and we have just everything in between. We have the elderly person, we have the Hanged Man, we have death, and so all of these events come through all of our lives all the time, and we get mixes of those. And then the minor arcanas are the smaller day-to-day things, and so that's where we are going to see oh yeah, I'm struggling with work right now, or I've got some money situation that I'm really afraid of this economy, and am I ever going to be able to retire? I get questions like this all the time. And so when I'm reading the cards, of course, we're mixing both arcanas in the deck, and they shuffle, and how the cards turn up and where they fall in my layout. It's all going to direct me on how to handle either their specific question, how to answer that, or how to talk about a subject. So some people don't really want a specific question. They may just say, tell me about love, or tell me about money, or tell me about the direction of my career, which is different from money usually. And then other people are more direct, and they'll say, I've got this big event coming up, and can you see how that's going to go? Or I'm having this conflict with my sibling, and can you see what they're thinking about? And I have had instances, as you brought up in my book, where I've read for people who have passed. I always stress that I never set out to call myself a medium, although I think we can do a little of that with the tarot cards. And I had enough people who wanted me to look at people who have passed on to, that now I feel pretty comfortable in, maybe it's not a back and forth conversation, but maybe I can say, maybe I can give you peace about, is your person on the other side in a comfortable place, or answer your question, did they die in a lot of agony, or did they, are they at peace now? Anything like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My sister died suddenly on the eve of my birthday in June. And
this past June.
Yeah. And she was younger than me. So my question is, why did she choose this time to go? Can you answer something like that? I mean, she was at a pinnacle of her life, great marriage, her kids are happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like me to look at that?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah. Can you tell me your sister's first name?
Mary.
Mary. Okay. I'm just going to kind of tune in for a second here.
Okay, thank you.
To look at Mary and why she chose when she did to go.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is interesting because we start with the Five of Cups.
Okay.
And the Five of Cups, I think the picture, again, the Rider-Waite is so perfect. So it's crying. Yeah, he's crying over 3 spilled cups. 2 behind him are just fine here. So she is or was aware that some things were going wrong. And I just see her like, I don't want everything to go wrong.
Interesting. That sounds just like her.
So I do have Temperance in reverse, which does tell me she had something wrong with her health. I mean, clearly, because she went, right? Something was wrong here. So Temperance is about balance and flow and moderation, but upside down, she was out of balance or out of flow. So
but the irony here is that she was remarkably healthy. 2 days before she died, she took an 18-mile bike ride with her husband.
And how did she die? How did she die?
She died of strep, and they couldn't find the source of it.
Very fast.
Well, very fast.
3 days,
48 hours.
Yeah. It was
well, what I would say about that, I think on a higher level, she knew this was in her. And it was, and it was enough to throw her out of balance, clearly. Yeah. Here's what I see. I see Page of Pentacles, which I read the pages often as siblings, because she's remembering you, Trish, as a child, as her sister, maybe best friends. And Pentacles, and this is, of course, positive and reaching out. And Pentacles are sort of going forward in life. So as her center card, I am just seeing Mary saying, you're great. Go forward. You have more to do than me. But there was something here with the Hanged Man. She did not want to be stuck. I think she did not want to be stuck in this negative place. Yeah. She didn't want it to go more negative. There's something. And then the Five of Swords in reverse tells me she was beaten. So this is about being beaten, a fight that you cannot win. Something about that strep took her down. And it may have debilitated her in a way that had she survived it, she may have suffered way worse.
That's what I thought. That was my sense. Yeah. So I thought maybe she saw what the options were and they weren't good.
Yeah, I think so. And I think on a higher level of consciousness, she had a soul contract that she said, I'm done. And she said, I've attained the things I wanted. I attained a good marriage. I had a happy life. She didn't want to wreck that.
Yeah, that sounds just like her.
She didn't want to go in decline. She
Mhm.
wanted to go out on a good note.
She also wanted to
she-
go fast.
And she did. And she had
Yeah.
a sister who loved her. And so she's reaching out to you here saying, go on, you do more. You've got more than me ahead, you know? So, you know,
Well,
you'll
thank
see
you.
her on the
That
other
fits.
side.
That
Good,
really
good.
fits. I
I'm
appreciate
glad.
it.
I'm glad. You bet. You bet. I'm
Yeah.
glad I can do that for you. Yeah.
So, Julia, in your book, you kind of surprise me by writing a lot about the Kabbalah too, or you make reference to the Kabbalah. And I kind of
Mhm.
relate to the Kabbalah more to astrology than tarot, but how do you see the two fitting together?
So Kabbalah is like the big umbrella over all of the sciences, the occult sciences. And so astrology, tarot, even mythology, even alchemy, it's all part of
Numerology.
Kabbalah. Numerology,
Yeah.
right? It's all part of Kabbalah. So Kabbalah is the system that all of these are based upon. They all sort of have the same structure within the big Kabbalistic system. And I didn't know beans about Kabbalah until I started studying Plath. So Plath opened me up to all of that. And then that's when I began to see the patterns and how, oh, right. And you know, the funny thing is, I had even read a book about it in my 20s, not understanding that I was getting a preview of Kabbalah. Hermann Hesse who wrote Siddhartha and Steppenwolf and some of the famous novels. He wrote a book, a lesser known book called Magister Ludi,
Oh, I love that
which
book.
is some German, right, for
Yeah.
the glass bead game, right? And he talks about how there's this sort of magical formula. And so any great work of art, you know, the Mona Lisa equals a Beethoven symphony, which equals a perfectly full, you know, formed crystal. And you know, and it was mind-blowing for me and maybe a little too heavy for me, honestly, in my 20s. But that idea stayed with me. And then, of course, to learn more about Hesse's mysticism as I got older, and also a student of Carl Jung, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, and Carl Jung knew it, and I mean, even William Blake, he didn't know to call it Kabbalah, but he did his own tarot before tarot had reached England, and he had his own Kabbalistic system that he intuited. And it's all the same thing. It's the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell speaks of. And it's all diagrammed in Kabbalah, in astrology, in mythology, in numerology. And, you know, it's so fascinating that this is the God system. It's how God structured the universe. And people have intuited it, and they have observed it in the stars, and they have seen it under the microscope and how the atoms are. And, you know, I mean, it's crazy that we have this pattern across all of life. And that's Kabbalah. And so that's what we're looking at through tarot. Tarot is a reflection of it. Kabbalah calls it the faces of God. In Hinduism, they call it the avatars of Krishna, you know? So it's amazing.
Yeah. What about the origins of tarot? Do you think one person actually started it? How did that happen?
Oh, you know, I don't think one person did. Yeah. The first tarot decks that we know of showed up around the 14th century in Italy. And the lore goes, and I say lore because we can't prove it, but the lore is that the Romani people used these cards as an encoded system to kind of smuggle mystical secrets around the world during the Crusades, because of course during the Crusades Catholicism was the only way, and you would die if you were Jewish or Romani or, you know, any other sort of, you know, pagan belief. And so the story goes that all of these little symbols and numeric systems and all of that, was put into the tarot. And so it's a sort of secret way that if these cards were found, they could say, oh, it's just a game. Yeah, just Cherokee, or Tarok, as Plath called it. And there is a game that is played with these, and so that was part of the secret. And so that's the story. And so they went all over Europe and into the UK, and before it was the UK, and just a way to smuggle mystical secrets around the world. Now there are other stories that say that the ancient Egyptians wove the hermetic, hermeticism comes from Hermes and Hermes Trismegistus, who channeled the emerald tablets, and gets into a lot of that alchemical stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention next. That I had read it actually originated in the Arab world, and
it's the story. I think it's a further reach, honestly. I think we're enchanted by the ancient Egyptians. I think that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, who constructed this, certainly consciously wove stuff in. But to say that tarot came from that, I don't think so. I think the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn put that in on purpose, because they loved the idea of alchemy and the emerald tablets and Hermes and all that. And so our magician card in this deck is the god Hermes. But I don't think, I would be skeptical to say it came from ancient Egypt. I think they put ancient Egypt in it.
Yeah. No, your theory sounds a lot more credible.
Yeah.
Wandering.
But it's the same with the Kabbalah. It supposedly came from that same time that you're talking about, 14th century or so. But then there's studies that show that going way back to like the first, second
Kabbalah. Yeah, Kabbalah came from ancient Jewish mysticism.
Yeah.
So that actually is documented to be much older than the tarot.
Okay. Yeah.
It may not have been widely known outside of Jewish mysticism, although the Catholics had their version, so Jewish Kabbalah is spelled with a K, and Catholic Kabbalah is spelled with a C.
Yeah.
And there's a whole group of Catholic mystics and Christian mystics who ascribe to Kabbalah with the C, basically the same thing, same system, just a different brand of it. And then when the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn came along, they spell it with a Q, and that's the Kabbalah that I refer to all the time, because it's sort of the more modernized Kabbalah, and it's a synthesis of both the Jewish and the Catholic. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I must have missed that in my Catholic upbringing.
It's funny. I was talking to a rabbi when I was studying it and showing him the Plath work, and I said, God, when I was married to my first husband, he was from a Jewish family, and I had all this pressure to convert for my sons, and I didn't do it. And I told this rabbi, I said, I kind of regret it, because now that I know about Kabbalah and all this mysticism. And he goes, I got news for you. And he says, you would have gone to temple, there wouldn't have been any of this mysticism. So it's a very elite kind of quiet group. And so Jewish or not, although I would have learned Hebrew, and Hebrew is such a mystical language with so much, and you want to talk about a letter embodying so much. And Plath knew this. And so to bring it back to Sylvia Plath, she has so many Jewish references in her poems, and she was attacked for that. People said, oh, who are you? This white bread Boston girl, with no Jewish background, and you're identifying and associating yourself with the Jews. Well, that was about Kabbalah. That wasn't about her saying I'm Jewish, although she was wise enough to recognize, oh, there's a nice little double meaning there with, and I can make the Nazi imagery, attack me and play around with that. So she knew what she was doing on a lot of levels, but people kind of attacked her for using that Jewish image.
Now, you said that your Plath book is coming out in May of 2024. We have
Yes.
to have you back on for that one.
Oh, I'd
That
love
was
to.
just
I know I've been
great.
talking
Sounds
about
good.
Plath just as much as
Yeah.
tarot here.
Right. Yeah.
That'd
And
be
we've reached the end of our hour, and
Our dog.
our golden retriever is up on his feet. He knows that
I saw him walk in.
he always knows when it's when it's time.
Which means
this
he
is
gets to go to the
yeah,
park. This has
this
been fascinating.
yeah, very
thank
quick
you.
hour just went by.
And
just
thank
like
you
that.
for doing what you did about my sister. It sure fits.
Oh, you bet. I'm really glad to do that,
Yeah.
and it was really a joy meeting both of you. Yeah,
And
very,
tell us-
very fun
tell-
talking
tell-
to you.
Tell people where they can find your books and locate
Yeah.
you on the web.
So Tarot Life Lessons, Living Wisdom from the Major Arcana, it's available everywhere, all the major
Okay.
bookstores. My previous books, I have 3 books on Plath. If they want to get the PDF of the out of print book, my first book, Fixed Stars Govern a Life, Decoding Sylvia Plath, they can write me at juliagordonbramer.com, and I'll make it happen and I'll get you a copy of it. If you want to order I have 2 published books, Decoding Sylvia Plath's Lady Lazarus, subtitle Freedom's Feminine Fire, and Decoding Sylvia Plath's Daddy. I published 2 books on her most famous poems, Lady Lazarus and Daddy, and I pull them apart and I show you those on her other poems, but I got sidetracked with projects that, as you know, that are coming up or just come out. So so I'll get some more decoding books out eventually, but Tarot Life Lessons, you can get it now. An audiobook is coming soon, which I read in my own voice. I'm not sure of the exact date that the audiobook will be out. It's a little bit later than the print book, which just came out November 7th. But I'm so excited because I know a lot of people prefer audiobooks, and it was really fun to read and to do it. And I will be also doing an audiobook for the occult Sylvia Plath.
Oh, great.
So yeah, so a lot of us are too busy to sit down with paper these days. And
It's true.
so it's something to do in the car or when you're traveling or whatever. Yeah, or exercising, the things I like to do. Yeah. So
Well,
thank
this
you
has
for
just been
having
great.
me.
Well, thank you
Yeah,
for coming
thank
on.
you.
This was just terrific.
It was fun.
Good,
And
good. I'm so glad
We'll
to do
talk
it.
to you in May.
We'll talk
All
to you
right,
next.
awesome.
Talk to you next.